Hey everyone, welcome back to a special edition of one of the weekly recordings that I have. So I actually have a guest with us today, Morten from the Tabular Editor team, who's here to walk us through about 5 hidden gems or things you may not realize you can do with Tabular Editor. Part of this is a collaboration on the fact that they've recently released a new course that was developed by Kurt Bueller, who runs the Data Goblins blog, which is a really good all-inclusive training that covers pretty much everything you can do in Tabular Editor. And even from my end, I went through the course and found that there were quite a few things that I didn't even realize you could do as shortcuts or extra little features. So I figured there was an opportunity to share with the community some of the a bit of a sneak peek of some of the stuff that the course covers and give you an opportunity to learn a few new things. And if you want to go check out this entirely free course that Tabular Editor has put online to allow people to leverage and utilize their tool better. So Morten, with that, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Reed. So I'm very happy to be here, and I have indeed brought a few things with me that we can take a look at, and even I think a few things that are not in the training course, because there are a lot of different little hidden gems or tiny productivity tricks in Tabular Editor that you can really use to just make life a little bit better for
Excellent.
you.
Yeah. Happy to get started. Go ahead.
Yeah. Um, to talk a bit about myself, my name is
Mhm.
Morten. I am originally from Denmark, but I live in Hamburg, Germany, and I am a PM at Tabular Editor. So I'm quite in charge of developing new features, a lot of support, documentation, doing streams like this with you, which is always fun. And that's basically my role. I think with that we can just jump into the little things that I
Absolutely.
have with me, and we can take a look at how to be a bit more productive. So, Reed, the first thing that I have with me is a little thing to do with when you update your column. So, you know that feeling when your data source has changed a name of a column from one thing to another. It's still the same column, but the name has changed and you need to update it. Now, what you would usually do is go into update table schema, like I'm doing here, and you get a dialog box up about this apply schema changes. And it would note that there is my cost no longer exists and will be updated with a new column called delivery cost. If I just click OK now, what will happen is that I get a bunch of errors in my measures because I used to use that cost measure, which is now be called delivery cost. And my measures can no longer find this invoices cost measure. However, and this is a tip, don't do that. If we go back, Control Z, another little tip, but to just use little shortcuts like that. When you update the table schema, instead of just accepting this here, click on the two columns, so the plus and the minus, Control click, so you select them both, and then right click and say combine as source column update.
Oh, okay.
This will combine those two into an update of your column, and it will filter through to all your measures. So when I do this, I don't get any errors any longer. I can go into my total cost and notice that my deliver invoices cost has been renamed to the invoices delivery cost. And this happens to everything that you have that references that, and that happens to everything that references that old measure.
I like that. I
I'm going
mean,
to do that one
it's
more time.
doing similar to what the I know that's you when you there's an auto schema update that happens in Power BI Desktop, and this is basically allowing you to reproduce that same effect to make sure that any dependencies of a item are auto updated in the same step.
Exactly. So it just ensures that your model don't end up with all those annoying errors in them, and that you can just keep working as if it was a regular change to the column.
That's super useful.
The second tip that I want to give here is that I often see people going into expressions and trying to edit them through the property pane tabulated. So let me give you a table here. I have set up an enable refresh policy on. And in that, there's a source expression that is like an NAM expression that I can click on, and I can open that up here. And what I
Okay.
often see is that people sit here and try to like write out their M and be like, and that's honestly, that's a horrible experience, I would say. So instead of doing that, simply right click here, oops, and say edit expression. That will bring up the expression directly up into the expression editor on the left side. And I can actually start writing. Now, this works for any expression that you have. It could be a M partition expression. It could also be a measure expression. Or if I have for measures, if I have my format string expression, I can do that same thing and bring it up. I could also go up on the expression editor if I am on the property, and then I can actually choose between all the different expressions that exist on that object that I'm at. But the quick way is to do this little thing of right-clicking, edit expression, and I get the whole expression of a measure up.
Oh, okay. Nice. Yep. And you get all the formatting and everything.
Well, it brings it up into the expression editor. So whatever the like DAX formatting, all these kind of things that you have will be directly available as if you've just chosen a measure, or in the other case of the invoices, of the source expression, it will bring up the M expression.
Yeah, I'm just saying some of the biggest takeaways for me are often some of the hidden integrations between certain actions and commands with some of this stuff. Like I'm definitely not a keyboard king when it comes to like shortcuts or anything else, or just the ability to kind of go from one workflow to the next. I put myself in the intermediate bucket of it, tabular editor developers, but seeing little things that save you even more time with a tool that's already saving you time, I think is a great way to kind of upgrade your skills with these things.
Yeah, exactly. For me, one of the takeaways is always try to right click on stuff. A lot of times, Tabular Editor will give you a lot of things if you right click on different objects.
Exactly.
Which actually brings me back to my next little tip. So the third tip that I have is when you are working on your DAX measures. So if I've chosen a month-to-date gross sales measure here, you can see that I have a bunch of variables and it does a bunch of things. And when you're in the expression editor, Tabular Editor allows you to do this thing where you right-click on a measure and say peak definition. And then you see the measure definition directly inside your code. So you can kind of get an idea of what it was. So you don't have to do that switch back and forth. I'd say. So if I have a long statement like this and I scroll down and I kind of wonder what was my current month variable and what was the definition of that I created up top, well, I can do the same, peak definition. I can even, if I go up to like a calculated column, such as my date, workdays, month to date percentage, do the same there and add a peak definition to that item.
That's
I
personally
can
one of my
really
favorite ones.
look through all my DAX code, and I can actually even interact with it. So I can actually go in here and copy it out if I wanted to, or only grab maybe the calculate part of my thing, my expression, if I needed that anywhere else in my code. I could
Now, can
take
you
that.
edit it?
No, you can't edit it. It is
Okay, so
just a read. You would then have to, if you want to do that, you can right click and go to Go Definition, and it will bring you to the definition. And then you can edit it. And if you want to go back, shortcuts, again, a very good friend of yours in Tabular Editor, you can do an Alt left arrow, and that will bring you back to the measure where you were just.
I like the fact that you can go to it. My only thought is it would be nice if there was a go to definition and then go like open definition, and new tab. You know, basically add a separate expression window. Because there is the control Z that you can go back to, but I can imagine some people might want to be able to like tab between definition 1 and 2. But I love the direct integration of that. That's really nice to kind of go down the dependency tree really easily of things that are based on each other, especially if you need to like, wait, what was this measure doing again?
Yeah, so for that workflow, I would recommend using the peak definition part and say to bring it up so you see what it was doing. And if you want to jump back and forth, as I just said, you can use go to definition and then use Alt tab right or tab left to jump back in between the measures that you were just
Yep.
working on.
Exactly.
But I see your point of having another expression editor. It's not something that we support right now, but yeah, well, I mean, who knows? I note it down and we can see what we can do about that.
Nice.
So the 4 things I want to show you today, Reed, is how to handle C# scripting a little bit easier. I don't know about you, Reed, but with me, I'm not a software developer and find it a bit daunting sometimes to open up a C# script and sit there with a blank screen. Now, C# script is
Yeah.
really one of those massive productivity features that we have that allows you to automate almost everything. But where do you get started? I mean, that's just me. How do you feel about that, Reed?
I mean, I definitely will say, yeah, Dax Studio did a great thing, like what last year with Dax Studio 3, where they had that little pop up that gives you some helpers and some other stuff. Because yeah, it's the same problem that Microsoft has with the canvas. Is anytime you just give
Mm,
somebody a blank page, what am I supposed to do with this? So having something to provide some instruction, whether or not it's a visual, a guide, an information, or a script or anything that can help get people started, I think it can
yeah,
definitely be useful, versus just giving them the entire kitchen. Give them a recipe.
exactly. And that's actually what I want to show you, because what you can do in the scripting component here in Tabular Editor is you can record a script for you. And what that does is that if I click on it, it will record every action I take within Tabular Editor and script that out for me so I can reuse the things I'm doing in another script. I can
Yeah.
save that script later and reuse it. So, for example, in this model, I have some calculation groups, but I don't have a time intelligence calculation group. So I could start building that by hand and say create a calculation group. I'm going to call it time intelligence. And if you notice, the script starts setting down what I'm doing. So now it has
Hmm.
made a variable that said add calculated group table. What should that thing be named? It should be named time intelligence. It should be within the table group, calculation group. And if I start adding items to it, I can make a daily one where I just have to select the measure, and I can add another one, which we call date. I grab that in there. And you can see that all these things are being recorded within my script so that when I stop the recording, I actually have a functional C# script that allows me where I can save that perhaps as a macro or
Hmm.
somewhere else that I can reuse later. And it helps me get started on what it actually is I'm supposed to do with these C# script. Like for me, it has main two purposes. Like it's get you started on doing something, for example, building a calculation group with time intelligence.
Yep.
Or if you've actually already gotten started on a C# script and are like, how do I do this thing I want to do? How do I add a petition? How do I add a new column? Well, I can open up a C# script, do it, record what I'm doing, see what is happening, and then reuse that in my C# script later on.
It's the exact
So
way
that's
we
kind of
all
that.
taught ourselves how to do the VBA in Excel, right? We use the action recorder, and you look at the script, and you to a degree self-teach yourself. I mean, I actually see a lot of parallels for myself with C sharp and VBA. Is like I wouldn't call myself a C sharp developer. I don't, I don't know the language extensively, but I've everything that I've needed to know, I've learned using Tabular Editor and the recorder and other functions like that for scripts and things to do automations. But you learn what you need based on what's relevant to you on those repeatable actions you want to continually reproduce for yourself without having to click stuff, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think for most of us, at least also for me, that is the best way to learn something like
Hmm.
that, something like C# scripting, or even DAX. It's also the way you learn DAX. You try something out and you apply it, or how to build visuals. Like all these kind of things is a bit of a trial and error. And a recorder function like this allows you to minimize the errors, or like at least understand what is being applied when you're doing certain actions. So for the fifth and final thing that I want to show you today, Reed, I'm just going to switch over into a different model. The one that is
Mm.
powered in Power BI Desktop. So what I have here is a Power BI Desktop model. And the tip I want to show you is mainly for those people who use Tabular Editor as an external tool to Power BI Desktop. Because what I do when I write a measure here in Power BI Desktop is you usually open up the pane and write out your measure on a line, and that's fine. It works. It does what it's supposed to do at this measure. But what I can do is I can open up Tabular Editor 3 as an external tool and find that demo measure that I had. Now, first, obviously, I just want to format it correctly. That's not the tip. It's quite easy to do with the shortcut F6, Shift 6,
Yep.
depending on the format that you want. But if I change this measure, and we're going to just minimize it a little bit so we can have both at the same time. So if I just edit this measure in some way, in this case, I just add a space to it, and I save that back to the report, you will see that the formatting is obviously gone to the Power BI Desktop report, but it has also moved my statement to start one line lower, which is, I consider, best practice when working with measures in Power BI, that you have your name equals and then you start on the second line. But Tabular Editor will just apply this to you directly. And the thing is, it is actually a little preference setting that you can set within Tabular Editor. If I go into Tools, Preferences, there are a lot of things that I can change with how I use Tabular Editor. But one of them is this little line break on first line of DAX, which does exactly what I just showed you, is to bring in that little extra line so that your measures in your Power BI Desktop just looks right.
Is that on by default, or do you have to turn that on?
That is off by default. You have to turn that on. So go in there if you're using it as an external tool.
Is there a reason it's not on? Curiously, is there a reason why it's not on by default? Because I feel like that's 99% of developers would usually have the line break, yeah?
Yeah, but yes, it has to do with, so it applies only to Power BI Desktop models. So you don't want to do that necessarily on your models that you have through your XMLA endpoint or those kind of things. And so that's why it's off by default. But in general, there are a lot of preferences like this that can be used to just make this experience a little bit different, that is styled towards the needs of you as a developer.
That's fair. Very fair. And then you even have the option for only multi-line. Yeah, because I guess if it's divide sales by budget, you don't necessarily need to have that on line 2. It can just keep it on line 1 if you want.
Yeah, exactly. So we allow for these different variations of it because, yeah, if it's just a straight out and easy measure, maybe you don't want the line break. But I find I often want it. So that's why I have it set up the way I have it, where I even do it for one line DAX expression.
It makes it a bit more vertical, which is how a lot of people like to read their code.
Exactly.
That's a great one for sure. You have one for hide auto date time warnings. Slap the hand of anybody that turns that one on. No.
Indeed.
Should just never be on for a model, ever.
But you can suppress it if you so desire. Wouldn't recommend it. It's also off by default. But you can.
I mean, there's a reason it's a warning that you're turning off a warning. It's not a notification, it's a warning.
But
no,
some
these
people,
are great.
Yeah. So that's the 5 things I had with me. I think they are little hidden gems that you can really use to optimize your experience in using Tabular Editor. and just make you a little tad more productive. Uh,
I think one of my personal favorite, well, that my two favorites for sure are the fact that it is the line break because I've had issues when I was first using Tabular Editor with that one, and I definitely remember just like man, like it looks formatted so well in Tabular Editor, but then the calculates on the first line and it like shoots over to go to the next ones. So when discovered that that existed, super helpful, and it was the one that Kurt showed me before we started recording this video, which I didn't
mm,
actually sadly did not know until only recently, which was the because I don't use the right click that nearly as much as I should. And you just mentioned the
yeah.
easiest way to discover anything, just use the context menu, which is right click for most people. Just check it out. There's often you'll find, oh, there's like three things I could do on this item I didn't realize. And show the formula or the measure behind like another referenced one that's in the expression
Mm,
editor is really useful. So I did not
Peak
actually know
definition.
that until this year. For the peak definition or should go to definition. Those two I hadn't
Yeah.
actually used before. So those were really nice ones that I liked a lot.
Yeah. So, and that's, as you say, like right click on stuff in Tabular Editor, and you will often
Hmm.
find additional things that you can do. Another one is also if you right click on a variable inside your measure, you can refactor it. So you can select all the things, all the measures,
Yep.
all the variables that you have, and you can rename them in one go. So yeah, a lot of those kind of small things around that just helps you get a little bit more in your
Exactly.
modeling.
And as I mentioned to people tuning into this, of course, there is a full free Tabular Editor training course that is available to go check out online that they released recently to help people learn the platform. So these are just a few of the fun takeaways that Kurt goes into through all of the courses and modules. Can you remind me like about how many hours of actual recorded content and lessons or modules are there in the overall training?
So if you go to learn.tabulaeditor.com, you will
Hmm.
have access for free to 9 courses that really covers, yeah, everything about Tabular Editor.
Yep.
And additionally, there is also since 2 weeks ago a certification that you can take to show people that you have this knowledge of Tabular Editor. Uh, and So in these 9 courses, there are about 40 to 50 hours of content. Um, so each course has between 4 to 6 modules, and it really covers both Tabular Editor items, such as some of the tips that I've shown you here,
Yep.
but also just general data modeling. Like you get to practice data modeling skills uh, through those labs that are incorporated into the course. So it's really hands-on. And the final thing I would like to say, I would throw out about it is just that in these labs there is a practice data set. So that's called
Mhm.
space parts, and this is actually a data set I've been using in the demo here as well. And for personal use to teach yourself, it's free to use. So you can start building model and learning how to data model through this data set. It is
Very
a
hands on.
complex data set, very it's fully based on um, real world experiences that we've had as consultants, as data modelers, and they have we've built those into the data set. So that really makes it very uh, lifelike, and hopefully a really good resource that can be used for everyone's learning journeys.
Yeah, I will highly recommend them to check that out. The links to check out the resources and content will all be down below. But it's something that I think really does teach you a lot of things you didn't realize are available in the tool, just because there's so many menus, hidden menus, and different ways to definitely increase productivity using it. So I'm very happy that Kirk spent so much time building that out, and you guys employed him for doing that because he's probably one of the best content developers out there for sure. It's
Sure.
rare for him to ever miss something that shouldn't be covered when it comes to those kind of topics and deep dives. So I want to thank you for coming
I'll
on,
be
showing us a few of these tips and tricks, and hopefully. For any of the viewers watching this, you'll go check out that free course and take the certification afterwards as well.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me, Reed. And yeah, have fun modeling out there.
Absolutely. Cheers, everyone. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to like, comment, or share this video. Plus, if you have any comments for a future video, go ahead and add that to the comment section down below. Now, if this is your first time to my channel, or you want to see more of these awesome videos, please click that subscribe and notification button. Also, feel free to show your support by becoming a channel member.